Season 2 of The Rings of Power is here, and if you've watched my reviews of Season 1, you know I have no love for this series. I gave Season 1 0.5 out of 10 stars. It's the worst series I've ever watched, and without doubt the worst Tolkien adaptation I've endured. To be fair though, I tend to skip the worst stuff being released these days. Looking back at it, I wondered if I was too harsh. Then I watched a couple of clips and realized it was way worse than I thought. Cringe dialogue like "the sea is always right," Galadriel jumping ship in the middle of the ocean, then by chance meeting Sauron, Halbrand, surviving an attack by a sea monster, surviving a storm on a raft, getting rescued by Elendil and brought to Numenor. Yeah, the whole plotline there is absurd. But not as absurd as Sauron having a crush on Galadriel, which, sadly, seems to continue in Season 2. I am positive about one thing though. Season 2 will be better, or so I hope. I simply don't have the imagination to think it can be worse. Based on the trailers, we will at least see some more action and stuff that at least border actual lore. Like Season 1, I will give points at the end, so we have an idea what aspects were actually good and which were not. So without further ado, let's jump right into it and review Episode 1. Do you like whining and crying about everything? Then The Rings of Power is just for you. Here at least one character cries in every scene, and by the end of the season, we know exactly why Numenor drowns. No, seriously. Every damn character cries in these first 3 episodes. It is truly made for a modern audience. The first episode kicks off with an almost 20-minute long backstory to Sauron, which, sadly, isn't very interesting. Apparently the Iron Crown is a crucial part of being the Dark Lord, for some reason. Who knows why and who really cares? The orcs aren't too happy about him becoming the new Dark Lord, and Adar tries to murder him with the crown. This is quite absurd, as it is Sauron who bred many of the orcs while Morgoth was in captivity. Not to mention, he has led them during the First Age, so it's not like he's an outsider, which it just sort of feels like. Anyway, Sauron explodes, or whatever this is, which then turns the landscape into some frozen hellscape. I got no idea why he didn't die after getting stabbed like 50 times, but who knows at this point. Anyway, this explosion somehow turns Sauron into black goo, which we saw in the trailer, and he spends an awful long time turning into Halbrand, but not before we have seen 15 fade-ins and fade-outs. It almost became comical at the end. Sadly, it was too boring. It did give me some Gollum vibes, but I don't see that as a good thing for his backstory. Halbrand then walks to Mordor, the Southlands, meets this random old fart that tells him a new life awaits beyond the sea. I got no idea if he means Numenor or the Undying Lands, but both are wrong, and of course made up, like everything else so far. Then on the sea they are attacked by the sea monster, and then we get back to the story from Season 1. Of course he finds the super cool onion heraldry, but who cares? So yeah, it's all pretty lame. This episode has 3 storylines, which I'll map out here to make it easier. We start out in Lindon, with Galadriel chasing Elrond on horseback. I honestly thought it was a memory of a happier time, or they were just fooling around. But apparently Galadriel is serious. Elrond have taken the 3 elven rings and wants to destroy them. Gil-galad is then convinced to keep them instead, so the elves don't have to leave Middle-earth right away. Once again, we get some cringe dialogue, both about dancing and obeying. If you've ever watched Pan's Labyrinth, you might remember the Doctor and his words about people simply obeying without question. It's not really a characteristic of a good guy. Anyway, Elrond then jumps off a cliff with the rings and flees to this sad version of Grey Havens. He asks for Círdan's help. He seems like the best part of this episode, but the bar is set really low. At least he mentions Eärendil, which is a person he would know, even better than Elrond probably does. So this is about the most lore-accurate thing in this episode. Also, this line is a bit off. Maybe that's just me. Sounds exaggerated. Círdan then sails out to throw the rings into the sea, but is convinced otherwise after looking at them. He then proceeds by taking a ring for himself, unlike in the lore, where he is given one either by Celebrimbor himself or Gil-galad, depending on which version we look at. Later there's a gathering where he shows up with the other 2 rings, which are also taken by Galadriel and Gil-galad, and not really given. They put on the 3 rings and the tree behind them blossoms, and it looks like they all get an orgasm or something like that. Yeah, I really don't like it. I could talk an awful lot about how taking rings often leads to very bad events, unlike when rings are given freely, but the series is simply not worth it. But that's pretty much the elven storyline. I could of course mention it's super weird Gil-galad threatens Galadriel with sending her to the Eden Moors, but most of this show makes no sense, so when stuff like this happens, I just shake my head and move on. The other storyline is with the wannabe Gandalf and Nori in the east. They are lost and can't find their way. Then this weird Easterling spies on them. It just looks like something from Star Wars. Even the music and landscape looks kinda like Tatooine. So yeah, it feels really, really off. And I know a lot of people have been commenting about this ever since the trailer came out. They eat some box at night after wannabe Gandalf tries to make a tree blossom but fails. I don't know why they thought it was a good idea. People already hate the harfoots. I don't think continuing to have them eat nasty stuff is gonna change that. Quite the contrary. Considering they are the ancestors of hobbits of the Shire, it's odd they don't care more about, good food. Anyway, wannabe Sam, aka Poppy, shows up with a map and suddenly they aren't lost, because they sing a song. A song that clearly tries to mimic The Road Goes Ever On, but it just sounds like a lot of meaningless nonsense nobody really cares about. And that's their storyline. The third and last storyline is that of Sauron, or Halbrand. He shows up in Mordor as a prisoner, trying to trick Adar into attacking Sauron hiding in Eregion, or something like that. It really doesn't make a lot of sense to me, unless he's trying to use Adar's forces to kill the elves. Sauron then gets thrown into jail and tames the walk inside with some black speech. They try to get him talk about Sauron, but he refuses at first, but then near the end tells him anyway. Adar mentioned himself being one of the 13 chosen by Morgoth, which is made up, of course. I find it a bit curious it's 13, like if it's an unlucky number or cursed at least, but this shouldn't really be there. There are of course several reasons why 13 is an unlucky number, but one of them is related to Jesus and his 12 disciples, where, as we all know, one of them betrays him. So I think they should distance themselves from this. Just think of Thorin's company, a company of 13 dwarves. Surely it ends badly, but not because 13 is a cursed number. Anyway, Halbrand is set free to ride to Eregion to talk to the elves and send information back about Sauron. Yeah, it's kinda weird. As Halbrand rides away, Waldrick gets killed by the walk and good riddance. The episode ends with Halbrand showing up in Eregion and sending a look to Celebrimbor. He wants to negotiate, as Celebrimbor's assistant, Midania, has just informed him. She's also made up, of course. And that's it. That's the episode. So let's move on to the points. Story. This came out in the morning where I live, and it certainly didn't do it any favors. I was almost bored to sleep throughout the episode. It honestly felt like nothing happened, and I think the whole backstory could have been shortened a lot. The Harfoot storyline is as dreadful as always, and I don't like a single character. For this reason, I end on a 1 out of 10. It's simply too boring. Lore. There's honestly nothing from the lore here. It's either made up fan fiction or goes against what Tolkien actually wrote. Even the few nuggets here and there are nothing and not worth a mentioning. So I end on a 0 out of 10. Visuals. At least the show looks pretty. At least when it's not so dark we can't see a thing. The look is very gamey and unrealistic, but that's how movies look these days. It's quite obvious when the landscape is fake and when it's not. In terms of costumes, props and locations, it's much like the last season. Greyhavens is quite a letdown. It honestly looks like a side quest village in Skyrim. So that's a downer. The design for the elven rings is beyond dreadful in my opinion, just like I said last season. And the only good costume I somewhat liked was Kieran's. That Easterling though, what is going on? I mean, the design is off by miles. Something is off there. What's up with this orc, by the way? This brings us to a 4 out of 10. Dialogue. The whole scene with Elrond, Gil-galad, and Galadriel discussing the rings were truly cringe. It was very clear they tried to sound like Tolkien, but are nowhere near as good. I found it odd to use the word masquerading. I've never heard it used in discussing Sauron's shape-shifting abilities, but maybe that's just me. Oddly enough, I think Gil-galad said too much in Elvish. It kind of messed with the dialogue here and there. Gil-galad calling Galadriel commander also felt forced and unnecessary. Did she get her position back, or what's going on? It doesn't make any sense to me. It's very far from the lore, no doubt, and the dialogue only makes the story even worse. I end on a 3 out of 10, which I'd consider very generous. Acting. I kinda like Círdan, but at the same time I also disliked Gil-galad, Elrond and Galadriel a lot. Halbrand weeping in every scene didn't work either, or whatever this is. Ugh. I really loathe Nori and Poppy, and honestly hope to die off in the story very, very soon. Sadly, I doubt it. I think the new Adar did a great job, so far at least. I think Waldreg was somewhat good, but also overacting at other times. So we end on a 4 out of 10. Music and sound. Overall, the music was decent, but rather mediocre in my opinion. I kinda like Gil-galad's song until it dragged on for too long. But otherwise it was nice. I really disliked the Harfoot song. That was a cheap version of The Road Goes Ever On, now with updated and meaningless lines. The Star Wars kind of music in the East also took me out of the story, and all of this brings us to a 3 out of 10. Final score. So what's my final score of episode 1? Well, it can hardly be a surprise. I didn't enjoy it. I really got nothing positive to say about it, and I'm surprised if anyone didn't find it boring. Truly. Nothing really happened. So I end on a 2 out of 10. But I've already seen the 2 next episodes, and I can say though, it will get better. Not good, but at least better. There we have it. I'm working as fast as I can to review episode 2 and 3, so expect them as soon as possible. As always, thank you for watching and being part of the Council of the Rings. Special thanks to all the members and patrons. If you want to see my reviews of Season 1, please check out this playlist. Farewell till next time.